Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Larry. I'm a PhD student from the University of Aquila. And my name is Larry. I'm a PhD student from the University of Aquila. And today I would like to tell you a little bit about my last work, which is called Third Gradient One-Dimensional Continua. I will show you some examples, and I will show you some computational identifications of the system parameters that we have conducted. It's a work in collaboration with Professor Francesco Dell'Isola, Professor Emilio Turco from the University of Sassari, and the Professor Anil Misra from the Florida International University. So, let me start by giving a brief introduction. So, what do we want to say when we talk about third gradient one-dimensional continua? Well, we are interested in describing one-dimensional planar beams that whose deformation energy is intended to depend on the gradient of the curvature. So basically, we are considering a beam where the energy will depend on the third gradient of the displacement. And the main idea of this contribution is to perform a numerical identification when we consider only the inextensible case. And let's say that the main motivation for this discussion is to propose a continuum model for third gradient materials. So in particular, you will hear throughout this week the term SAPAP, a SAPAP structure. SAPAP stands for six-sided articulated parallelograms with articulated braces. And I will not go into many details about this type of structure, just by saying that it's a structure that was built based on the linkage theory, and is intended to have an homogenized deformation energy that depends on the gradient of the curvature. So what is interesting about this type of structure is that it has floppy modes that basically will lie on an arc of circumference with different radii. So you will see later that this is a quite interesting structure, and we want to introduce and study a continuum deformation energy for, let's say, for the homogenized SAPAP structure, SAPAP beam. So we will follow quite interesting path. First, I will show you the more general approach, where we consider different contributions, and then I will consider only the case of the inextensible one-dimensional beam, which is the one that we consider for the computational identification. So, from the general point of view, we are going to consider contributions from the elongation and the gradient of the elongation, the curvature, the gradient of the curvature, and as I said, the third gradient will be given by this contribution due to the gradient of curvature. Okay, and basically, I will show you for the general model some examples about how, let's say, some interesting shapes that we can find for this type of beam. I will consider some examples by imposing the displacement of different material points, and then we will see for the inextensible case what we found for the parameter, which we decided to call double bending stiffness. It is the stiffness associated with the contribution due to the gradient of curvature. And it makes sense because for the curvature we have the bending. So it's a reasonable name, I would say. I will go quickly into the background just by mentioning this work by Professor Oliver and Professor Dell'Isola, where quite significant contribution in terms of the second and third gradient theory was done. And as many of you may know...
how it is possible that you have lost the third order, which is Sepesher?
It's that. It's the other.
Okay.
It's, yeah.
Oh, but that paper is with Sepesher?
It's the other one, yeah.
Okay.
I cut it to make it expeditive.
Okay.
It's the picture.
Okay.
But there is another one with Professor Sepesher.
Pierre could be very upset if you...
No, but it's here.
Yes.
Just to make sure that you will not get upset with me. Okay, so as many of you may know, this is the pantographic classical basic module, and you have the whole beam. The sub-hub, you will see later, that is built in a similar way. And as you know, this beam has the particularity that it does not store energy under uniform extension, as well as for the Warren type pantographic structure. So talking about third gradient beams, we can refer to this, which does not store energy under uniform bending. Now, this is the paper I would like to emphasize on, because it is precisely where the sub-hub structure was introduced. And as you can see in this figure, you can have this type of floppy mode. So you will have current configurations that belong or that follow a path which resembles an arc of a circumference. Now let's go into the third gradient one-dimensional continuum. Just by considering the general framework, we will work in the plane and introduce the classical frame of reference. In the reference configuration, our beam will be described by straight lines of certain length, and we will introduce the classical placement function, chi. Now, in order to make computations more clear, we will introduce some derived fields, theta and rho, which theta stands for the angle between chi prime, the placement, and our first basis vector. So basically, theta prime will be describing the curvature, and rho will give us a measure of the elongation in the end. Now, being that said, this is our postulated deformation energy for the continuum, where we have several contributions related to the elongation here, the curvature here, the gradient of the elongation, and the gradient of curvature. So as you can see, this expression in the red box will be the one for which we will conduct the computational identification. Okay? And just let me recall that we have this relationship between our placement and the derived fields theta and rho, given just by this constraint, this kinematic constraint, which we will include in our deformation energy as follows here, just following the calculus of variations and introducing this Lagrange multiplier. Okay. Now let's go into, from the general point of view, how it will be the equilibrium conditions for this type of third gradient beam. So if we consider essential boundary conditions like this, blocking one end and giving information about rho, theta, and theta prime, so I will emphasize here an initial curvature. We found that these are the boundary value problems that describe the equilibrium conditions, okay, the equilibrium configurations. And just to say here that we will have a differential equation of fourth order for theta, and of course we will have the condition for our Lagrange multiplier. Now I will go into the numerical examples just to show you how interesting this third gradient beam will be. And just to say something in the beginning, we will consider an experiment which is basically imposing the displacement of three material points in such a way that in the current configuration those material points belong in an arc of circumference. And you can see that if we activated some contributions due to the elongation, in fact, we are not exactly following the arc of circumference, like, for example, this zoom into the figure B. 3B is shown. But if we consider certain conditions, for example, if we consider only the contributions due to the gradient of curvature and the gradient of the elongation, you will see that it is easy to make the beam follow an arc of circumference. Okay. This is another example where you can see it clearly. By imposing the displacement of these 3 points here in such a way that they belong into this circumference, we will get that the actual configuration of our beam will follow that. And that's exactly what we want when we talk about the SAPAP structure in terms of the homogenized SAPAP structure. Okay. Now, we will consider when we impose the displacement of 5 material points, you can see how interesting it could be, especially if you compare the classical Euler-Bernoulli beam. So on the right, you can see that in the classical case, for instance, this last part of the beam will remain straight, while on the, if we add these contributions due to, for instance, the gradient of curvature, you will have this quasi-circular path with an increased radius. Okay. This is another case, and you can see here that for this example, we are blocking the left edge, and here, if we leave it free, then it will tend to minimize the curvature. So it makes sense what is happening there. This is another example where something quite similar happened. And now we can consider another example where we impose the displacement of 5 material points arbitrarily, and we will see, and we see this type of shape. Let's follow this. Okay, now I will go to the part of the numerical identification of the system parameter, just to recall that here we are considering the inextensible case, because it's the one that better suits the homogenized SAPAP structure, as you will see soon. So, what can I say about SAPAP? You can think about how the pantographic structures are built. So basically, you have a modular structure. This here, composed by the nodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, is the basic module for the SAPAP. And you can see that it is periodically present in this default structure. Now, for the simulations, we are introducing some bars that have a different stiffness just to make the computations. And for instance, here, the bars that have different stiffness with respect to the vortex are those that are portrayed in red. So, you will see that we can get really a quite decent match between the continuum model and the discrete model by identifying the proper double bending stiffness, which corresponds to KB star. Okay, this is basically an animation of the type of experiment that we are conducting. So for the SAPAP, we are applying a vertical load on the nodes, and you can see the type of, let's say, current configuration that we can get as we increase the load. So this animation basically is one current configuration for an applied load, and we are going to increase it. Okay? Just to recall here that the load will be applied in the middle layer nodes. As you can see, there is a top layer, a bottom layer. We are considering a load in the middle layer. And you will see later why we can do that. Okay, so this is basically the description of the experiment that we are conducted. Numerical experiment that we are conducting. Now, let me just recall and go back to the structure. For this computational identification, we will fix nodes 1, 3, and 89 and 91, which are the ends of the discrete structure. We will apply the vertical load to resemble self-weight, and basically we will introduce this multiplier lambda, which will allow us to change the magnitude of the load that we are considering. To speak a little bit about the continuum, as you can imagine, we have to give some boundary conditions. And of course, we are considering that we don't have, let's say, a change, a bending on the streams of the beam, that we are fixing the vertical displacement in the right edge, so here, as you can see. And of course, this will allow us to compute the equilibrium conditions. And just to recall what is the deformation energy that we are considering, here it is, plain just the inextensible third gradient 1D continuum. Okay, so our computational identification for the double bending stiffness KB star is based on least square, to say, approach. So we are basically identifying the best coefficient, the best fit coefficient in the sense of the least square. How can we do that? Basically, we are postulating that we can establish a relationship between the middle nodes in the sub-up structure and certain material points that we can identify in the continuum. And by doing that, we can consider the positions of these nodes in the discrete structure and these material points. Then we can see the problem of, let's say, identifying this coefficient as a best fitting problem by introducing the residuals, which are basically measuring point to point from the node, from the middle layer node, and from the material point of view, material point, yes, the distance, how far we are between them, what is the distance between them. And for that, we just simply introduce a function that is measuring, let's say, it's giving us this position. So in the end, this computational identification is basically reduced to solve this optimization problem as in the classical least square fitting approach, obviously nonlinear, highly nonlinear, as you can imagine. And this is a picture of what we got, talking about the double bending stiffness KB star. We are able to provide a range, but as you can see here, the order of magnitude is the same. So basically, even though it's not, you could think that it's not small, but it's something good because we are really close. Remember that this computational identification was thought to be for the homogenized mechanism, and we are, of course...
How many elements?
Yes, I will mention that. Okay. So, thanks. So basically, as you can see, the sub-up structure is composed by different modules. So we expect that as we increase this number of modules, we will be able to provide a better value, let's say a smaller interval for our double bending stiffness. Right now, we are considering around 46 intervals. So, in the sense of the middle layer nodes. So, this is quite a good, let's say, estimation. And you can see that if we consider the relative error point to point, taking into account the length of the beam, the error, the relative error, it's not, let's say, big. So we are in a good path to complete the identification of this stiffness. And I will show you now how good is the match that we are getting between the discrete data and the continuum data. So here in this plot, you can see that the nodes of the sub-up structure are portrayed in red. There are these here, following this curve. And that the continuous line is portraying the current configuration given by the continuum model. So you can see that actually the fit is quite good. Now, we are also measuring if there is some extension, if there is some elongation here by computing the arc length of this curve and considering with respect to the original one, and of course it is inextensible. Now you can see that as we increase, this is the magnitude of the load. So as we increase the magnitude of the load slowly, we can see that we are getting very close to the current configuration of the SAPAP using our continuum. And this is a plot of the descriptors, the components basically of the displacement, and the derived field theta and the curvature theta prime that we have introduced above. This is another example where the load is higher, and you can see that the qualitative behavior is quite accurate. See? And this is another example. Now, just to finish with this part, in the plot A, you can see basically what is happening in the right edge of the continuum. And it's basically what we are getting from the discrete data. So no displacement in the vertical direction and this behavior in the horizontal direction. This is actually the comparison between the evolution of the descriptors in the middle point. Of course, we are considering the middle point in the SAPAP structure, the middle node, in the middle layer, obviously, and a middle material point in the continuum. So I perhaps can zoom in so that you can see that actually we are getting the same behavior. You can see here the dashed line and the continuous line, respectively, for the SAPAP and for the continuum model. So numerically, it's quite good. And well, I will go to the conclusions now. So what we got is quite interesting, this behavior that we can expect by introducing the gradient of the curvature in our model. We have estimated a region of where this double bending stiffness for the SAPAP structure will live, and of course this estimation will get better if we increase the number of basic modules in our computations. And the idea is to continue this path and to go to higher dimensions, because basically what we have now is basically material lines that depend on the gradient of curvature. So we can think about a material built on this material line, like a fabrics, something like that, that will have an interesting behavior. And we can consider imperfections and evolution of damage. So those are the next steps in our modeling. So yes, I think that's pretty much about it. So thank you for the attention.